And it was time to leave, about 1980, I forget the exact date. But I got on the airplane, and then the airplane landed in Midland, Odessa. Now, Midland, Odessa, Texas is about the most boondock place I've ever been in. Honey, you've got to look for a Coke machine. You know what I'm talking about? This is the boondocks. All you got is great big long trucks and truckers. And how many know that those guys that work the oil fields don't wear the right kind of shoes? They wear boots about this, you know what I'm talking about, the great, all right, and that's all you got. You got oil guys and these big long trucks that have got these pipes on them, and they got a funny end because they does anybody remember how these work? All right. And my pilot of the airplane that I was on got out, went around the airplane and grounded the plane. Which meant that I got to spend all night in Midland, Odessa, Texas. Boy. I was tired. I'd been in a convention. Our conventions would last, what, a week back in those days. And will you tell these people that Doc Holloway is a hard man to work for? Tell them that. Yeah, he was a hard man to work for. And I worked for him, and I did the very best I could for him. But I was tired, and I wanted to be home. So I discussed the matter with my boss. And he said, "Shut up. Sit down and do what you're told to do." I said, "Yes, sir," like I was trying to make up like I'd already figured this out. Next day I got on an airplane, went back home, changed planes in Pittsburgh, sat down next to General Caldwell, who at the time had the most troops under him of any general in the world. I think it was Mississippi. Where's the big training place in Mississippi? Army now, it says Army. Well, anyway. And we talked, and he said, "Who are you?" And I told him who I was, and "Who are you?" "I'm General Caldwell, glad to meet you," and so forth. "I'm Dave Ebaugh, former engineer at IBM. Now I'm a Bible teacher." And he said, "What went wrong?" Then I went through my famous, "Boy, you're lucky to have me on board on this plane." General Caldwell and I began to talk about things of common interest. He knew some people, I knew some people. By then I'd been in a little politics, and we talked. And he told me that he had the largest command of any general. I remember what I said. Now, I guess I can say it now. "What's your opinion of General Haig?" Boy, did he know that I was digging. And he could tell it. And oh, he was mad. I said, "I've heard that you generals are really, really mad because he had been passed over." Do you remember the story? And who passed over? Who was in charge of it? Kissinger. And who did Kissinger work for? Rockefeller. All right, now we got Kissinger and we got General Caldwell who knew the story. And I'm sitting next to him. How many know why I couldn't finish the flight the day before? How many know why God had planned for me to sit next to General Caldwell? And he began to say to me, "My job is to go to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where I must now, tomorrow I must give a lecture to the War College." How many have heard of the War College? The War College. And he said, "I must lecture on the War College on what I think is about to happen." He said, "I've got no idea what I'm going to talk about." And I grinned and I said, "I know. I think God put you in that seat, sir. And you know something? he responded respectfully.
Good.
And I explained to him that the attack on Israel was always during one of the feasts, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. I explained to them that they had had a tabernacle attack, that they had had a, was it a Passover or Pentecost? I forget. Pentecost attack, and they were ready for a Passover attack. And I showed him that the Arabs attacked the Jews on the high Jewish holidays. The general, who had more men under him than any other, had not been exposed to this type of teaching. But how many know that guy had a paper out and a pen writing notes as fast as he could? And he said to me, "This is the outline for my lecture tomorrow at the War College. I would like to tell you something, Bob, that maybe you don't know. That in Quantico, the very next year at Passover, all leaves were canceled." That was my fault. Are you hearing me? The 6th Fleet was at the ready, which is one stage from for war. You understand? They had now at the ready, the men are behind the cannons, but the cannons are not loaded. You understand me now?
Yeah.
The men were on the ships and behind. Now, do you understand that normally, as we go, not me because I was never in the service Navy, but those guys on the service Navy, they did not man the turrets until there was a very serious problem. Turrets are a bad place to be. They're like tanks. You sweat yourself until, you know, it's a horrible place. But they stayed in the rest of the ship. But when you're on the ready, then all hands, battle stations, go to your battle station. Do you know what I'm saying? And I still get scared when I hear somebody say battle stations. It raises something inside. And yeah, and this battle stations, now they're at the turrets. And the whole 6th Fleet, do you know what I mean when I said the whole 6th Fleet? That's the whole Mediterranean Fleet is now at the ready. They're all in their stations. They have not yet received the order to load. But I want you to know the loads are right behind them. That fast, they can reach back here, grab the load, and place it in. And then we're at war. We're at the big war. This is the big one now. Then we had some other ships out there called the Ohio-class Trident missile submarines in the Mediterranean. With 24 missiles, they were able to deploy on the top of each missile 10 MIRVs, multiple, independently targetable re-entry vehicles, giving them a chance within 20 minutes to then deploy 240 atomic bombs the size of the Hiroshima bomb.
Wow.
From a launch platform under the sea, the exact depth at periscope, at a tech periscope, is not secret anymore. It's 62 feet at periscope, but then when they're hiding, that's still secret. General Caldwell took this information to the War College, and since that time, every high Jewish feast, our soldiers and sailors in the area are put on the ready. Are you hearing me?
Amen.
So now you get to make a choice. Did God send a prophet?
Amen. Yes.
To sit next to a man that there was no way that he could get next to?
Right.
No way. Except schedules on airplane seats. Was that an accident? A coincidence?
No.
Or was that written in the script from before the foundation of the world?
Yeah.
A lady named Flo Dodge from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wrote me a letter, and it arrived in my office just a few days before Betty and I left for Israel. We had, in those days, we were taking busloads of people. Why are we in Tel Aviv? Because General, here at General Moshe Grau had given an invitation to Betty and I to be guests in his home. Why did he give us an invitation to be guests in his home? Because just 2 days before, we were at a place called the Upper Room, over the burying place of David. There in the Upper Room, our group of people acted Pentecostal. There were 3 buses of 40 people in each bus. No, this was our first trip. I remember now it was the first trip, and the reason I know it was the first trip because we had the Mennonites with us, and there was that Mrs. Ebersol with her real genuine Mennonite, and in the upper room she was dancing with a young girl in a mini skirt. Now this was Grandma Mennonite, got it? And here in Harrisburg, that particular family is a well-known family in the Christian circles there. And now she's dancing with a miniskirt girl. I knew God was in it. I knew there was no way to bridge that cultural gap. Do you understand me now? There's absolutely no way except God did it. General Grau came running out and said, "Mr. Ebaugh, what is the meaning of this?" Well, I didn't turn to Acts 2, I just quoted it. "This is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, saith the Lord, I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your young men shall see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. And upon my servants and my handmaidens will I pour out of my spirit." General Grau had already been somewhat attracted to us because we were down in the valley, the traditional valley of Jehoshaphat called Kidron, when he said, "This is the traditional valley of Jehoshaphat." And I said, "That's impossible." And he stopped back and he looked at me and said, "What did you say?" Now, you understand this is a general. Now, I was in charge of the English-American people on this tour, but he had been handpicked by the Department of Tourism, and he normally is not a tour guide. This is very important to see. He's normally not a tour guide, but he was handpicked to do our tour, and only one other a year before. And that was for a man named Billy. You got it? And he told me that. And he said that he had invited Billy Graham and my wife and myself to his home where we were guests, had dinner with General Yossi Grau. Flo Dodge had written a letter and said, "I see you with a military man, and you have a map laid out, and now you're explaining to him the plans for the next battle." She wrote it to me. General Grau, way down in Israel, had just said to me, "I've never met a man like you. How can you know that this is not the Valley of Jehoshaphat? I just told you it's the traditional valley, and you know that it's not." And I said, "Well, of course it can't be. It has to be up here by Megiddo." "How do you know that?" "I am a Bible student. I am a Bible student. I teach what I learn. These 120 people who are with me now are Bible students. They're here because they like to hear me teach." General Grau invited me to his home. There he laid out the maps. And there I showed him, and he had said to me, and he showed me the deployment of his defenses around the north side of Jerusalem. And I said, "General Grau, that's a mistake." "You will receive your attack from the Wadi by En-Gedi, that comes up from the En-Gedi and goes to Hebron. You will be attacked from that direction. He said, how can you know these things? They're not in the Bible. And I then flipped over and showed him chapter and verse where they are in the Bible. And then he knew and I knew that there was something up. And he listened for a half hour as I showed him how that the troops from Ammon had amassed back in the Old Testament and came up from the south of the Dead Sea, up the west side of the Dead Sea, came to Cliff Ziz, Z-I-Z, where they went up the Wadi, which is now what we would call a dry riverbed, into Hebron. Then they attacked Jerusalem from the south. And I said, General Grau, you must have defenses on the south side. But he said, we've always been attacked by the Greeks from the north. And I said, but these are Arabs, not Greeks.
That has to do with it.
And that's exactly right. And today you will find Jerusalem fortified on the north and south. It's fortified on the north because Jews find it hard to admit that I'm right. It's fortified on the south because they think I might be.
Yeah.
Now, could a white hat sailor ever be placed with two leading generals?
Not naturally.
I'm asking you a question. Could a man like me, a white hat sailor, a submarine sailor, yes, I did good. I did some good things, but honey, I was so far from those guys that they wouldn't give me the time of day if I was in a uniform. But I was dressed up like a king's representative.
Come on. Yes.
And I knew what I was talking about.
They knew.
And both generals knew I knew. And they respected it.
Amen.
Now I got a choice, and I've chosen. In my opinion, God sent a prophet to the leading general of the United States and to the leading general of Israel,
I believe it.
and told them, watch out in the directions, the way it's going to attack, and all the details of it. And in my opinion, both generals paid attention. How does that make you feel, Brother Ebaugh? Makes me hungry. You didn't catch that.
Right.
After you've done what you're told to do, you're just right back in your old chair again. You're right behind the old wheel. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like it's over. You did it. You did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Amen.
But one thing happened on that bus, I'll tell you now because it's over with. The information's already out. Came out in a book written by a Mossad agent out of Canada. So I can tell this part of the story. When we had crossed the top at Mount Carmel, and I was sitting on the left hand of the bus, and I looked out, and there in the harbor at, what is it, Haifa?
I believe.
Haifa, Betty? The harbor? Help me. Mount Carmel. Haifa, I believe it's Haifa. I saw my old submarine.
My goodness. And Russ,
I know that sub because I know what we call the sail on the back of the. I know the characteristic. They had put an additional topside rudder on it, but I saw my old submarine. And why was it my submarine that was tied up there? Well, you see, we gave my submarine to the Turks. It was called the USS Cobbler, SS 344. It'll tell you in James, Ships at Sea, that the Cobbler was sunk because the Turkish Navy was in maneuvers in the, Black Sea, I think, and it tells you right in the book, you can't believe it, that the chef, the fellow that was in charge of fixing the food in the after battery, had taken some garbage up the after battery, left the after battery hatch up, it flooded, the after battery flooded, and the ship sunk.
Did they lose all the crew too, Dave?
They didn't say anything about the crew.
Right.
Nothing said about the crew, but I'm going to tell you what happened. The Mossad took that submarine away from the Turks, and I'll tell you why they took that submarine. That was the very latest, best submarine in the whole world. It was a USS Cobbler. It's the one they put me on. It was the last submarine built during World War II. The Cobbler served in World War II for 1 week, and the war was over. And therefore, as far as ships at sea, at that time, it had the best bearings, the finest engine. You know what I'm talking about? And what ship would the United States give to the Jews? The best. And I'll tell you, you can find the name of the lieutenant commander who was in charge of that ship later in that book. I forget the name of the book, but it came out of Canada. You can check these things out if you want. That was my boat. I'll tell you about another submarine for just a minute and get into this and then wrap up on this and go into the lesson. I'm curious about the book because there was a submarine called the CSS, Little David. Did you hear that? Not USS, but CSS. What does CSS stand for? Confederate States Ship. The Confederate States ship Little David attacked the Ironside and kept Charleston Harbor open. Who was the inventor and builder of the CSS Little David? A man by the name of David Ebaugh.
Huh. Good name.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Relative?
Yes. The water flows in our veins.
Some water.
It's in the book.
Huh? Is it?
It's in the book.
Yes, it was the first successful attack. And it was a 50-pound load on a 16-foot rod in front of the submarine.
Wow.
And the only way they could get it there was to deliver it as a manned torpedo. When it blew up against the Ironsides, the plume of water went up into the fire, the water came down, now get this, down the chimney, because the CSS Little David was a steam-driven, put out the fire, and the 3 men jumped out. 2 men then swam ashore, and 1 was taken prisoner on the ship that he had decommissioned. Admiral Dahlgren, do you remember Dahlgren? Any Navy man remembers Dahlgren. Admiral Dahlgren then wrote the reports about the attack and said the whole world is changing. The world, the Navy as we know it has now changed. They can attack us with underwater ships. Everything has now changed. Then a man named Holland came along and built the first genuinely successful submergible. Did you hear the difference? The first ship was not a submergible. They put it underwater by adding iron to the ballast. It didn't have tanks like we have today. Okay, I'm speaking now not from books I've read, but from my life. Can you understand this?
Amen.
I'm talking from my life. These are things that are important to me. How do you think I felt when I discovered the first successful submarine was built by a man named what?
David Ebaugh.
What did that make me feel like?
Right.
I felt like a man of destiny. I felt like God had his hand on our... So, I am of the opinion that all of us are here by purpose, not by chance.
Amen.
You understand me now? There's not an accident among us. Now, I feel very fortunate that I've had the time to look into the history of my family. If I could entertain you and tell you all the names of all of my grandmothers all the way back. Because not only have I studied... All right. But I want you to know something. This is important to me. Why? Because in each generation we're half grandma.
Right.
We carry the father's name, but we carry the mama's paddling.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We carry our bringing up from our mother, though we get our genes mainly from our father. Okay. So I've studied these things, and I think they're important. I believe they're important, and I hope that I'm not boring you with some of these stories, war stories. We got to be careful because we can be easily misunderstood about this. Now, did I say anything bad about a Jew? Did I say anything bad about a Roman Catholic? Did I say anything bad about a Protestant? Did I say anything bad about a Mason? No, I'm giving a history lesson of who did what when. And I'm telling you, you can't get this kind of a lesson in any publicly financed school. You understand me now? A school that depends on public finance can't talk this way. They just don't do it.